Hello guys, hi again on our second session to our React Unplugged study jam. I hope everybody are ready to start with React.js in this session. We have provided a docs in this description of this video with all the code snippets that we will be using in this session. So stay connected, and from our next video we will be starting to build the Carpe Diem website. So let's start with what a React.js is. So React is just a JavaScript library for building user interfaces, but it is not a framework. This React was developed by Facebook primarily and was released in the year 2013. And this is one of the most influential library across. Specifically, we use React framework as a dominant force in the web development history as the innovative virtual DOM technology delivers unparalleled performance. And also, we ensure that the lightning fast rendering and the smooth user experience is there in the React, and also React is versatile in nature. And also, the React is having a component based architecture where there is a header, footer, content, and the asset section. For example, a navbar component and the build events home component are also there, and these each section is a component that can be reused in a website n number of times. So let's see how the coding is done for React. First, I'm getting into the VS Code. Here, I have already installed a React app. So inside of that, this is the document that is used for building a React app. For uh, creating the React app, we will be using this is the command npx create react app and the name of the app that you are going to use. So I'll be copying it. So in the terminal of the VS Code, I'm pasting it. And since this is our first app we are going to do, I'm naming it as Hello World. And if I give enter, the app is getting generated, and this may take a little while. Let's wait for it. Okay, now the React app has been created successfully, and you can see the folder that has been generated over here named Hello World. Okay, now our terminal is in the folder of React. So now we have to change the directory and the location to Hello World. So I'm using this command cd hello world. So now our location has been changed into the Hello World app. Now I'm going to start the app. So if I start the app, this website will be run in the localhost 3000. So this is the default things that has already provided by React while you create a new React. So for so this is the folder where all these things has been declared over here. So the logo has been declared, and in the paragraph those edit code and learn React. Here also there is a learn React and an anchor tag is there. So let's try changing editing this. Inside of the paragraph tag, I am gonna write hello world. If I save it, it automatically renders, and see, you can see the hello world has been changed now. So the beauty of the React.js is that the building of a component that has been brought down to a theoretical minimum of just a small function. Here it is just called app, and the file is also named as app.js, so that when we export this app inside of the index.js file, the component has also been named as the app. Okay, then inside of the return function, these are saved as JSX. The return value of the function is just the HTML UI, which is in a special syntax called the JSX. This allows to combine the JavaScript with the HTML. The JSX is a syntax extension for JavaScript that allows one to write the HTML like code with the JavaScript. Primarily, we use this React to describe the UI structure. Okay. Now I have shown you how to print hello world in a simple terms, and now let's just break down what these folders denote. So first of all, the node module. In this node module, the folder installed when the npx app created and has all the installed dependencies inside of this. First, when we use npx create react app. So if you guys wonder what an npx is nothing but a small package that has already been installed when we download the node.js. And next come public folder. Inside of this public folder, we have only one index.html file. So this is the only HTML file that we are going to have it throughout this React thing. So in the body section, we see this line. So in this line, there is only one div tag that takes ultimate responsibility by declaring an ID named root. And also inside the public folder, if you want to add any assets, you can add like favicon icon, and this icon has all if you see, this has been rendered in the website that localhost 3000. And then inside of the source folder, we have the app.js. Here is where the app component has been declared, and a few app.css also is there. Then the main part is comes to the index.js. Okay, and this index.js, see, the starting point is index.js, where this app component has been rendered. This is the DOM element controlled by the React. DOM element has the element ID. Here the ID is root, which has been declared in the index.html file of the public folder. Remember that. And the app component is rendered completely inside of this root. So the app file, app folder, app.js component that has been exported here is being rendered in the index.js file, index.js file, and the root is here.
Welcome to the React Unplugged. So in this session, we are going to see about how to handle any events. So let me just start with the intro of what is an event. So basically, any user interactions with the website is called as an event, such that every time you're clicking a button or else submitting a form, you're basically triggering an event. So in doing so, in this session, we are going to focus on capturing those sort of events and how you can use it for more user-friendly experience for your websites. So then, moving on to the coding session, now I'm first going to create the required code for the app.js, which can be created by this keyword. Yes. So you can access these type of keyword from an extension called as the ES7. So for to install it, just go to the extension section and then search for the ES7. So yeah, this is the extension which was talking about. So this extension is the one which provides many different sort of keywords of this type. So yeah. So after installing this, you can use this kind of keywords easily, which can be very useful for the further development. So yeah. Now let me move on to the button creating section. So for that, I'm going to create a new folder called as the component folder. And then in here, I'm going to create another file called as the click handle, which is going to be helpful for creating the button and also to capture event. Yeah. And using the same keyword. As you can see, in this basic button, as many time you click it, you are triggering an event. But this event is not captured. So now let's try to capture this event. So for that, I'm going to create the event handler. This is the onLink function, whose only use is to handle an event when the specific tag is triggered. So on doing so, so then on doing so, it will create a function for such that whenever we click the button, we are triggering that function. Let me name this function as onClick. And then similarly, as part of this function, I'm going to define it using the arrow function syntax. If you still don't know what the arrow function is now, I recommend you to go watch the first session before continuing further. So then, in the function body, I'm basically going to trigger an alert function which says I'm click. Okay? Okay. Then in this one function, I'm basically going to initiate this function. So that now we are successful in creating an event and when capturing it, let's just get you the output. So yeah, whenever we are clicking this button, it gives an alert that I'm clicked. Okay, so now we have successfully created an event and captured it. This is called as event handling. So similarly, the function as the function. So similarly, like the function on click, there are basically several triggering functions such as the on mouse over on mouse out, on key down, etc. etc. But as this function goes outside of our whole session, we will not be covering it. But I still recommend to you to learn as per your preferences. Okay? Then, before using this use-state hook, let me create a scenario in which it can be useful. Okay? So now basically what are we gonna do? So my primary goal is to whenever I click this plus button, this count should increase. And similarly, when I just click this minus button, the number should decrement. So for to do it, what can I do? So in this scenario, if you just try to execute it using the different functions, it will be like more complicated. But if you just try to use the use state hook, it will be so simple and you will also finish it in a single. On doing so, let me just initialize the use state function. And for to use it, we just basically have to call the use state hook. And then in the bracket or the arguments, we're basically going to set the default value just to 0, such that even in case of refresh, the count will start from the 0 value. So then whenever we use this use state hook, that is whenever we call it, it returns two functions, or else the two variables. That's it. The first one is going to be a value, the basic value, that is the count. And then second is going to be a function. Okay. So this number or the variable name can be of any choice, such that this count is going to be acting as a variable. And then the set count is going to be acting as your function which calls for any modification of values. Okay. And similarly, I'm going to call this count variable here. Done. But till now, we haven't called this function. That is, we haven't implemented any functions for that. First of all, let me create this function, the increment. So whenever I call this increment one, it basically increases my count value. Okay. And similarly, let me do the same for the decrement also. Remember, calling it as a function call.
set a function call. Count value set as the arguments to the function name is the set call. So so now everything has been set. So now let's try to use this. Yeah. As you can see, when I just try to click the increment button, the value increases, and then when it is just to decrement it, it decrements automatically.
So now, what do I basically want? I want the set count to make the count variable increment by 1 whenever I just try to click the click me button. So as the on click function defines or calls a function, I want to define the set count value as a function basically. So for that, let me just create this as an unnamed function. So for to use it, you have to call it basically like this. So now, then moving on. Okay. So now, moving on to the output screen. So yeah, now when I just try to click this button, you can see it works. That's because whenever you try to use the hooks, it basically that whenever you just try to use the hooks to change the state of any variable, it automatically re-renders the screen every time you just try to trigger it. So that's why whenever just I try to do the previous one, it does not work. But when I just try to use the hooks for this one, it worked basically. So yeah, this is the reason. Okay, hope you understood the uses of the use state hook. So now, so basically, so what does the use state hook do? Thus, simply put, it allows us to declare a state variable in functional component and gives us a function to update that state. It's like having a box to store some data and a key to change what's the inside of the function is. So the magic of React is that whenever we try to change the state of the set count, the React will automatically re-render the component to reflect the new value of the count. This simple yet powerful pattern allows us to make interactive dynamic applications with minimal effort. So to sum up, useState gives us the ability to manage the data that can change over time within a functional components, enable us to create rich and responsive user interfaces such that it's one of the first hooks you will use whenever working with React, and it also plays a crucial role in building a dynamic application such as the Carpe Diem website. Okay.
So yeah, now after defining this function, let me use this. The increment function has been called. Similarly, the decrement one is also defined.
So now, let me introduce you to a key concept in React, the useState hook. So it's a fundamental hook that enables us to add state to a functional component. So instead of giving you a technical explanation, let me show you a practical explanation so to what this hook is used for. So now I hope you are familiar with this format of event handling, as we just explained earlier. So what I'm trying to do, so now whenever I would just like to click the button, I want the count to increment on the simultaneously. So now moving on to the output. So whenever I just click it, it is not incrementing. So why is that? That's because whenever I even though I try to increment it, it's not rendering the every time. So that the output screen is not changing. Okay? So for to avoid that, I'm just going to use these hooks. That is that's where the hooks come into play. So basically using any hooks you can render or or make changes in the display every time you just trigger an event. Okay, so now let me just modify this code to a more hooked version. Uh, So yeah, so for to use the hook, first of all, I would like to import it. So yeah, the import is done. So for to use it, you have to first of all define an argument. So what is this argument? This argument is the one which sets as a default value for the any variable which you are assigning it to, such that every time you refresh it, the zero, in this case the zero is the one which comes first. So basically this use state hook returns two type of answers, that is the value and a function. Okay, this name can be of anything, like it can be also be like an increment, set increment, some, so on so forth. So now, so whenever I just want to click this button, I want the count variable to increment. So on the onClick function, so guys, so now let me just explain you one of the powerful hook in React, which is called as the use effect. So for to explain the use effect more elaborately, imagine you're building a house. You lay the foundation, put up the walls, and everything looks great, right? But now you have to connect it to utilities like electricity and water. In React, your components also interact with the outside world, fetching data from the API, subscribe to events, or even interacting with browsers DOM, or the document object model. These operations are called as a side effects, which needs to be managed properly, and that's exactly what the use effect is for. Use effect allows us to handle side effects in React component after it renders. Unlike what happens in compound render logic, side effects are things that happen outside of React's purely visual world. With use effect, we can make sure that those side effects are handled efficiently and in sync with our component's lifecycle. So let me just tell you how this use effect work. By default, use effect runs after every render of a component, whether you're updating a state, fetching new data, or performing any asynchronous task. React will re-render the component after the render is done. Use effect step in to take care of your side effects manually. So for example, let me just implement the usage of use effect from this code which you have already be familiar with. So for that, let me just first implement or the import the use effect. Okay, and then now I am going to initiate the use effect. Okay, now so for to give the example or the give the output of this, let me just execute it. So what I am basically doing is that this is the output which we got from the code snippet. So now obviously, as you know, whenever I click this button, the count increases. But do you also know that every time I click this, there's a rendering going on in the background? So let me just show you the output. So now whenever I click this button, we are seeing that the printing, it's printing that the component is called which is the use of the use effect hook, such that whenever the component is re-rendered, it automatically prints the function, automatically prints the statement the component is called. So from this, I hope you can understand the usage of the use effect.